Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Perspectives. It's such a pleasure to join you, and I want to thank you for being with us. I really appreciate you. I got interviewed the other day and I got to brag about our viewers, and I think you're fantastic. It's great that you're here. Today we have a very special guest, especially if you're Australia-centric. So his name is Tony Nash. You may know him as the man who co-founded Booktopia. It is a very large online book seller here in Australia. It's massive. It's where I do my business, which I didn't get to tell Tony in the interview. But Tony's just a great guy. He's a real pragmatist. You're going to enjoy his very down-to-earth approach and nature when it comes to building such a successful business. It is the world's largest online and offline book retailer in the world, which is quite the achievement. I think it's fantastic. So obviously everybody's minds go to Amazon, but Amazon's focus, as Tony reveals, isn't in books now. So they've carved out this phenomenal niche themselves with some entrepreneurial thinking, pragmatism, seeing gaps in the market and just figuring out, obsessing about what the customers want. He created the business with his brother Simon and friend Steve, and their starting budget on Google Ads was $10 a day. They deliberately did not make a profit till 2016. They started in 2004, did not make any profit till 2016. We talk about that in the interview, and that was deliberate because what they wanted to do was to keep funding the growth that was required to take care of their customer demands. It turns over in excess, I think it's over $200 million a year now. It's been listed in the AFR BRW's Fast 100 8 times, the only company ever to achieve this feat from 2009 to 2017. It's been voted Bookstore of the Year. They've moved into publishing as well. We didn't get to talk about that as much as I'd liked, but that's a really interesting new niche they're carving out for themselves. It has won the New South Wales Telstra Business of the Year, the Australian Telstra Business Award, People's Choice Award. We were a finalist in that. I remember that. They've been a finalist 7 times in the Telstra Business Awards, and it's stated that Australian authors and titles are a key focus for this company, and you'll hear that come through when we talk with him. They completed an IPO in 2020 during the first year of this global pandemic and our response to it. They did an IPO, so initial public offering. They went public and they capital raised successfully. They did an 11-week launch from decision to IPO, which I think is fantastic. They hold nearly 200,000 books in stock, ready to ship. They sell an item every 4.8 seconds. Their warehouse is in excess of 10,000 square meters. Their main rival apparently is Amazon. Even though Amazon is in Australia, Booktopia is just doing gangbusters, going from strength to strength. We talk about teams, culture. We talk about what it takes to build a business. Very much this theme of pragmatism and keeping your head and focusing on the customer and figuring out where the sale is going to be made, because everything else up until then is talk. And with no further talk from me, here is Tony Nash. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, Tony.
Where are you based?
Melbourne. Where are you?
Sydney.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's great that you're here, Tony. Thank you for taking some time out. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure.
So you've been going now, you began in 2004.
Mm.
How would you say, if you were to describe right now how you got here? Rather than telling me what you did, how did you get here to be in this position where you are now with Booktopia?
Mostly for me, look, it feels like one thing led to another. So I'm very horizon point driven. That means that I have a clear picture of where I want to get to, and I may not necessarily know that that's how to get there, but by having that horizon point, to me, it's more like a mountain range beyond a mountain range that I can see in the distance and going, right, we've got to get to X. And at the moment, we're turning over 200 million. So therefore, what have I got to do to get to 300 million? But before that, of course, it was getting from 100 to 200, from 20 to 100, and so on and so forth. So if you work your way back, then that's quite often when I think about the driving force. It's like if someone said to me, come on, let's get on a boat and go for a trip, and where do you want to go? And I say, look, let's go east. Well, we could end up in Alaska, or we could end up in Antarctica. And you go, well, can you be a bit more specific? And it's like, well, New Zealand, North or South Island? North. So Wellington or Auckland? Auckland, right. Where in Auckland? Well, you know where the marina is, where we're going to. where they had the America's Cup. That's where we're going. And all of a sudden, everything gets clear. And that to me is a lot about having that destination that then creates a level of thinking which gets you into action.
Okay, so you start with the end in mind, which is what anybody who's an entrepreneur who's successful and not successful starts with. I imagine that's part of it, but there must be more to the soup, because it's not as simple as just set the intention and the horizon line, because a new horizon line keeps presenting itself, and that horizon line is always further away. And to get to that new horizon line, the challenges are always unique, because once you've conquered one horizon line, you've conquered those challenges. The next horizon line is completely different challenges are required for you to overcome. Can you talk about that?
Yep. So where the engine sits in terms of how we fire up and what we do comes from asking one question every day: what do our customers want?
Yeah.
So even though there's an endpoint in mind, it's still coming from the point of what do they want, because that will determine what we do to get where we need to get to the horizon point.
Yeah.
So that's how it feels to me, in terms of, I guess, if you were to use the New Zealand metaphor, it's kind of like, are we going to go in a cruiser, or are we going to go in a sailing boat? How are we going to get there? And so that would be the next unpicking of the, taking the layers of the onion away. There are many other things though that make up the, who's on your crew. What sort of roles do you need to have? We can't afford to have passengers, so who's doing what? That comes into play if I think about it. I've never really used it in this kind of metaphor before, but that makes sense to me. How are we funding it? So do we want to have more month left at the end of the money, or do we want to have more money left at the end of the month? We focused more on cash flow statements in the beginning than we did in profit and loss. There was a very clear growth strategies that I had in mind in terms of getting, I didn't want to overgrow. I didn't want to under, but I didn't want to grow too quickly.
So slow down there. So that's talking about capital raising or not capital raising. How did you decide what your sweet spot was for over or under growing? Was it an intuition? Did you have numbers to base it on?
Yeah.
How did you go? Yeah.
Kind of felt to me like by growing at around 25 to 30% a year was a stretch that was manageable, but not exhaustive. And so, and what I liked about that, it wasn't lumpy. So every year, people were used to, be it in the distribution center and customer service, sales, marketing, whoever, like they just knew that we were growing at a very steady rate. And I found that to be really helpful in terms of people getting used to it. If we were jumped like 80% one year with the pandemic, which some companies would have, and then it's only 10% the next year, overall, over 2 years, you've increased by, I don't know, 40% a year, 35% a year. But for us, having that steady growth all the time proved that we could bring on people, that we could fulfill the orders that we were getting, that we could manage our cash flow, that we weren't spiraling out of control. That's how it felt for me.
And I imagine if you had overreached, you would have been in danger of not getting the capital funding you needed to bail you out of the overreach. So it wasn't as simple as finding the sweet spot. Really, the business relied on it, because you were profit net nothing for how many years? That was extraordinary part of the story.
Yeah, that was intentional. So to me, it was about putting back into the business everything that we were accumulating. So having started the business off a $10 note back in 2004, we had another business at that time. And when I say we, I've been in business with my brother and my sister and my brother-in-law. And we had another business, internet marketing. So we were doing consulting work, and Booktopia was a little side project for me that got bigger and bigger. So it was just about getting all that. And the beautiful thing for us, of course, customers paid up front.
Yes.
So they transacted, they gave us their money. We then hustled as hard as we could. And then our suppliers, mostly in the book industry, is that it's 30 days end of month. So in some instances, we may have sold the book on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th of the month. We didn't have to pay that for almost 60 days later. So there was an aspect of using our customers' money. They were our investors.
Yes.
They handed over their money, and we worked hard to hire more people, hold more stock, write more software, buy more automation. But there were times when we moved, when we changed facilities, we invested in automation,
Mm.
and our suppliers were stretched. We were late in paying them.
Okay.
We had to continue selling more books to then eventually pay them, and then we got to the next level, and we
Yes.
finally were able to kind of get some clean air again once we'd gone through that layer
How
of
long did
revenue.
you not make money for?
That was until 2016, and
Incredible.
that was so
It was on purpose.
it was on purpose.
Yeah.
And what happened was we tried to IPO in 2016.
Yes.
We had got to 80 million in revenue, and we went through the whole journey, and it was basically like going down to Bondi Beach in Sydney on a midwinter's day to try and sell ice creams with a southerly coming in from the Antarctic, and it was 8 degrees, because Temple and Webster were trading at 15 cents. They're now at $10. Kogan had flatlined over the 6 months
Yes.
since they had listed. Surf Stitch was going off the market. Redbubble had gone backwards. And so and then the week that we were trying to firm up the price and do our management roadshow, Amazon announced they were coming to Australia. And so the
Yes.
fund managers all said, well, they're going to annihilate you. So
Yeah.
we're not interested. And we had to go away and go from 80 million to 200 million in the meantime. And so Amazon didn't annihilate us. But the one thing I took away from that particular process was that, okay, growth has been great, and putting all the money back in has been terrific. But I think we now need to become a little bit more sustainable and focus on revenue and profit. And so we started to focus on profit and build that up as well. So that then tapered our growth. So we didn't
Mm.
put as much money back in, but we still had high double-digit growth. We just didn't have as much. But we were then, if no one gave us money, if we couldn't raise money ever,
Mm.
then we still had
Yeah.
our own business and we were self-funding it then. So that put us in a stronger position. And that's why I shifted from being a revenue-based business. And in the early days of the internet, people really didn't care about profit. They just wanted to know that you were growing.
Yes.
But it was clear to me that, especially talking to fund managers, they wanted to know that if they put the money in, it wasn't only going to be potentially capital growth, but it was also going to be dividends as well in
Yeah.
the long term.
When you talk about sustainability, you talk about in terms of there needs to be the cash flow and the profit. Isn't sustainability, though, also about stabilizing your supply chains and stabilizing distribution in Australia?
Tell me about it.
So you had to not invest as much money back in your business as you had to stabilize a sustainable distribution network. How did you do both? How did you do all of that?
Look, the way that most people do that is they understand their supply chain model and where they can get their product from and how that works, and then they start to order um, and build up a level of capacity that takes into consideration the slowness of whoever's supplying you. So in our
Yeah.
case, the algorithms that we wrote to order the stock that we needed for the 150,000 titles that we had in stock was to make sure that we would bottom out and have zero for a little while, but then it
Yeah.
was coming back in. Now our algorithms, and because we've got the funding, is to hold as much as we can. So
Wow.
our low tide is well above the
Yeah.
0 point, and
Yeah.
so then you do that. What I'm doing now, though, is which is more exciting for me, having moved from online retailing about 4 or 5 years ago, we got into distribution.
Yeah.
So now the publishers are appointing us as their Australian distributor. So we sell
Yes.
to ourselves, but we also sell to Amazon and Dymocks and QBD and all the little
Yeah.
indie bookstores where they buy from us. So we've actually addressed that supply chain by saying, hey, we can hold your books. We can actually sell more if you keep it with
Wow.
us. And of course, for Booktopia, we get better discounts because we are the distributor now. And so that's one of the areas.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then also we're talking to printers. Like, for example, there are printers. There's a legal publisher here in Australia. They print in Sydney. Their warehouse is in Canberra, which is 3.5-hour drive away. So they drive all the stock and all the product down to Canberra, put it in the warehouse. Some obviously get sold in Canberra, but it's mostly in Sydney and Melbourne. So then it all comes back to Sydney and to Melbourne, right? What the hell? Like
Yeah.
freight company is making money out of that. And
Yeah.
there's even at the last semester, we're very big in academic books. And
Yes.
one of the PhD students ordered a book from us, which John Wiley is the publisher. So we ordered it from Wiley. It's a PhD book, so not many are needed. So it was print on demand. It was printed in Singapore, which is their POD partner. They then ship it to Queensland, where their John Wiley shed is, their distribution center is. They then freight it down to us in Sydney, and we send it to the customer. What the hell? How much? It's all going to the freight companies. So
Yes.
my goal over the next 10 years is really to address that layer. Historically in the book industry, because it's been going for 570 years, and certainly for the last several decades, it's very siloed. So the printers did the printing, the publishers did the publishing, the distributors held the books, the authors wrote them, the literary agents represented them, and so forth. It's very, very siloed. And I'm looking at addressing that with our investment in logistics, in publishing, which we've also started in the last couple of years, and just kind of see if we can remove some of that and have that profitability sit with us, give more to the author, and hopefully make the price very compelling to the customer.
What you're also doing is taking over a part of the market that's never been addressed. You're doing something, you're making a unique offering that hasn't been available to authors until now.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is the lucky thing for me is I'm not really a reader. I actually do listen to audiobooks. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but to sit down, probably because I have ADHD and focus, is that I was never much of a reader. So I came into the book industry as an outsider, looking at it from a very different perspective.
Yes, that's cool.
They had a very this is the way it always was, the way it always is. Looking across their valley of publishing in the book industry, going, look at our valley. And I'm going, well, I'm in a helicopter looking from up here, or I went over to the other side of the valley, or I sailed down through the river, through the middle of it, and I got a different perspective. And so from my view, I just didn't see it the way that they saw it. And I just saw other opportunities within that.
One of the things that you saw was a belief in a business model. I'm going to say it. Perhaps Amazon may have been on your mind in a couple of those meetings. How did you know to keep going when this monolith had decimated the US book market and the publishing industry around the world? How did you, I want to know your thinking, because it's more than a punt that you've done. This is...
Well, in the beginning, though, the thing is that Booktopia was started with no light bulb moment or great insight or there's a gap in the market. It was just a side project, $10 a day. We used another company to manage our site and fulfill our orders because they had done it for one of our internet marketing clients, Angus and Robertson.
So they built the site for you as well, the first ever ordering algorithm?
We got, through our internet marketing consulting business, we got Angus and Robertson, one of Australia's oldest bookstores, their website to the top of Google as a project.
Yes.
And they used this company in Sydney to manage their site and fulfill their orders. And this company managed 80 bookstores' websites.
Okay.
So my brother, who had done that project, set up a meeting in Christmas of 2003, pitched the idea of us being introduced to their other clients and getting them all to the top of Google so they can make more money. And the owner of that company said, nah, not interested. I said, you're not interested in making more money? I said, seriously? And he goes, no, we build websites, we manage, we've got this platform that we can get a bookstore website up and running within 10 minutes. There's 1 million books on there. And if you sell anything, we pay a commission. I said, well, that sounds interesting. And he goes, yeah, I know, but no internet only business has made anything out of it. It's all been off the back of a traditional bookstore. So I went away from that meeting. I said to my brother, geez, I wouldn't mind giving that book thing a bit of a go, because I could see there was very little cost from our side other than driving traffic and getting a commission. And so I went away from that, came up with the name Booktopia, registered the business, and sure enough, this company got the Booktopia website up and running within 10 minutes with 1 million books on there. And my brother, who handled the finances, said, you can start Booktopia. It's got to be outside of hours because we're doing all this consulting work. And I said, sure. And
so you're selling your time for money as a consultant, not even visualizing the vision of what Booktopia could become.
No, we had no idea.
No.
My brother wrote My brother wrote the sales plan. You'll sell one book for the first 3 months, and then it'll go to two, and then it'll go right. It was
This
just
is awesome.
right. And so then
This is awesome.
so my brother who handled the finances gave me a budget of $10 per day to start the company.
What did you
Right?
spend the $10 on? I've been dying to ask you that question.
Yeah, Google AdWords. I was a Google
Of
ad expert.
course, Google
But
Ads.
but I didn't go for search terms like books or bookshop
Okay.
or those kind of generic terms. I went for authors and titles and sent them deep into the site because they had already used Google to do a search. So I sent them to where those books were, and it took me 3 days to sell my first book. And
Congratulations.
that was the total sales for the day, one book.
Yeah.
And by the end of the month, I had done $2,000. But by the fourth month, I was up to $30,000 a month. By the end of the year, $100,000 a month. By the end of 2 years, $200,000 a month. So we kept.
What was your distribution back then?
Well, they did it. They did it all. That company that managed our site and fulfilled.
Amazing. They took care of it all for a commission.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we got a commission for generating a sale. So it was a white label system. They had 80 odd stores that they were managing, and they did Angus and Robertson, Collins Books, a bunch of other independent bookstores, and we were one of them. And then we quickly became one of their largest. And it was once we got to around 2 million in revenue, we could see that there was something going on here. And I went to the Australian Booksellers Association annual conference in 2006, and we were still doing the internet marketing. We were still using this other company. And I came back from that and I said to the family, these guys have no idea what's going on. We got to go out and do this ourselves. And because of my background before internet marketing, I was a recruitment consultant for the computing industry. And before that, I was a computer programmer. And my brother-in-law was an IBM software engineer.
Perfect.
And so we had the confidence to build our own site, which we did. And in 2007, beginning of 2007, 3 years after we had started Booktopia, we parted ways with the other company. Went and moved into a small warehouse in Sydney, 500 square meters next to a brothel. And not that we knew that when we moved in, we only found out later. And then bought some shelves on eBay, hired a warehouse manager, rang the publishers, and we said, it's us, it's Booktopia, we're turning over 2 million a year. Never heard of you. Because all our orders have been going through this other company. So we got basic terms, basic discounts.
Yes.
And we still did our consulting work. So it wasn't until 2 years later that we could finally say, all right, Booktopia is turning over, I think it was around 7 million. So we could stop doing the recruitment, the internet marketing.
Yeah.
So we could focus on the Booktopia business. And
what were the publishers saying to offer you such lousy terms when clearly the volume you were moving was bigger than any one bookstore or brand in Australia?
No, we were only doing 2 million, so there was nothing there. In fact, I remember getting a letter from Pearson, the education publisher, to say, as you're an online retailer and have no overheads, your discount will be 10%. Now, at that stage, I don't know, we had about 10 people working in the business. I looked around at our warehouse and our shelves and our people. I said, what do you mean no overheads? Because they just think that it's some sort of
smoke
happens by magic kind of thing. And so it took quite a while. It took, I would say, another 5 or 6 years for them to really get their head around what was going on. And they started to shift because it was a very archaic industry. Where, where they controlled everything. And so once we got to, I don't know, 30 or 40 million in revenue, we were starting to
you might have negotiated a little differently.
Well, we probably, our discounts improved, our terms improved once we, of course, paid our bills and put more volume through.
What was it like signing that first contract on the first warehouse, still working in your other job?
That wasn't too scary. It was $1,500 a month, I think. So it was not much more than what we're paying for an office in North Sydney. But it was, we didn't hold any stock in the beginning. So we literally took orders from customers and we would order it from the supplier. It would come in, a few weeks later, 5 weeks later, 8 weeks later. And people were bitching and complaining, saying, like, you guys suck. I should have bought from Amazon. And it was about a year after we had gone out on our own. So almost 4 years of being in the business. This one book had been selling really well because the author had been on Oprah. And it was the wife of Jerry Seinfeld, Jessica Seinfeld. And America had sold out of its 300,000 copies, and HarperCollins in Australia had 200 copies left. So I said to my brother and brother-in-law, we should buy all of them. Then no one will have it except us. So we did. And it arrived into our warehouse. And imagine walking into a bookshop where there's only like one book on the shelf. Well,
Yeah.
that's how our bookshop looked at that time. So when when an order would come through the site, we'd just pick it, pack it, and ship it. And the feedback from everyone was, wow, what great service. You guys are really quick. And I said to the others, To Kill a Mockingbird is sold every single month for 50 years. Why are we ordering it in? And what else is there? How to Win Friends and Influence People, Power of Positive Thinking, Think and Grow Rich, Harry Potter, Dr. Zeus. So our little warehouse that was supposed to be more of a cross-docking kind of thing
Yeah.
really started to fill up. And then after a couple of years, by 2009, we had to move out of there to 2,000 square meters. And we thought, well, this will last us 5 years, the 5-year lease. And we ran out of space after 2 years, and then we had to take another 2,000 square meters.
And at this stage, it's all manual handling of every book.
Yeah, except we bought one packing machine.
Okay.
Which sat in the middle, and someone would at the one end just put it through, and it would come out with a package, wrapped around. And it was in 2014, 7 years ago, when we moved to 10,000 square meters, and that was a pretty big leap. We were turning over 40 million, and we moved here, and that was when we invested initially 5 million in automation, and then which was conveyors and more packing machines, and then over the next few years, we invested another 5 million in automation to improve our capabilities, and then that got us to around 150 million in revenue by the beginning of 2020, and that's when we did our first raise.
How did you come to the decision to do the crowdfunding? Can you talk a little bit about that? I think our listeners would be really interested in how bold a move that was to even consider it. Was it over a glass of red that you came to that decision? Were you on MDMA?
No.
How did you go to crowdfund? Talk about that.
Yeah. So what happened was, when the IPO didn't happen, and we had when you do an IPO, there's a lot of costs involved, and we accumulated those costs, and then we never raised the money to pay off those costs. What I recommend to the listeners, if they are looking at it, is definitely accumulate the money for the capital raise, rather than try and use it out of the proceeds of your business, because that really stretched us. We had a couple of $1 million in costs that needed to be paid down, and that put pressure on our suppliers, which meant that we were being put on stop because we couldn't pay them. We had to sell more, and it was a very tricky period to navigate our way through.
And that's not how you want to do an IPO.
Yes. Well, we didn't have much, 80 million in turnover, so we didn't have many other options, but that was our lessons and learnings on that period. So then once that didn't happen, we did look at a trade sale. So we engaged a company from Seattle to go around the world and talk to companies who might be interested in buying us, because we were on track to get 100 million in revenue. We got no interest there. So then, okay, that was done. And then the business was continuing to grow, and I thought, well, one of the reasons why we wanted to IPO in the first place is that our customers are our hugest fans. They've been our investors all the way through, buying books from us, and that's why we wanted to list. So I knew some guys who had the crowdfunding platform, and I reached out to them and I said, look, how about we do raise some capital through you guys? And so we had some conversations, and we said we already had a prospectus that could be reused to go to market with, and so we did that, and we were going to be able to raise a few $1 million out of that. And the reason why we didn't was because we also did a roadshow with a guy who has a company called Wholesale Investor, and we went to Sydney, Brisbane, and Singapore, presenting ourselves to the investor community. So this was alongside the crowdfunding, and through those events, I did end up at the top of the Sheraton at 11:30 p.m., edging my way to the back of the room because it was so noisy, standing next to this guy who we get into a conversation. He came out to Booktopia, gave him a tour, told him where we were at, and he goes, I think I know a guy who might be able to help you out, raise some capital. And then this guy, Mark Payton from AFSG Capital, came out. We really liked each other. He came into the business 3 to 4 days a week, working inside. And that's the one thing I felt at that time. It felt like the problem, or the reason why we weren't getting any results in terms of raising capital, is we didn't come from the capital markets. And other companies who had been succeeding had someone there either an investor or a CEO or something who had come from the capital markets and can talk the talk of that part of the world. And so he came on, and there was things that were missing in terms of some of the modeling that we had within our business was missing.
Good. That's helpful.
He wanted more profit, so we made some changes to some of the things that we'd been doing in terms of postage and so forth, and made sure that we upped our profit slightly. And then within 6 months, we had completed an $8 million raise. And then we also added to that $12 million of some senior debt that we ended up having for about 11 months until the IPO. And that enabled us to invest in the automation that we needed to get to the next level. So that was how come the crowdfunding came into play. I still want to.
I love it.
I wanted to have our customers own a piece of Booktopia.
Exactly. I love that. It's a really inspiring message. How was it received by your customers?
Well, pissed off in the end because we closed it off and went through the traditional, because we were going to raise a lot more money, which is what the business actually needed.
Yeah.
Rather than 3 to 5 million, but they loved it, and those that were going to invest more than most, some people that were investing 5,000 and more were invited to be on the priority offer for the IPO.
Yeah. And that would have been great. So they had a way to feel part of the story that was unfolding. Yeah. I'm interested that when you went looking around the world, there were no potential buyers. Was that because you feel you were underprepared in terms of what those potential investors may have been looking for? What weren't they seeing that this is a stable, sustainable, replicable, completely, it can only scale up because all you're doing is supplying to customers, not consulting clients. So the scalability is obvious. What was the gap?
It's a tricky one to answer because there's two types. There's obviously private equity firms who have got a specific mandate.
They do.
And they'll be looking at businesses in a very two-dimensional way, going, okay, where are they geographically are they based? What vertical or sector are they in? And a variety of other things. And being Australian,
and growth, they care about growth trajectories tremendously. They got to show how they can make the money in 5 years.
Yeah, a lot of them, though, Australia was not part of their geographical mandate, or what they were looking for. For those that were in publishing, because we're e-commerce and because of the value that we and Amazon and others, Atlassian and so many other businesses that are out there are based on, it's a very different valuation than a publisher or a traditional business is based on. So they struggle to get their head around the multiples.
So the multiples are higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
not according to them, though.
No, well, they're traditional businesses, so there was little appetite there. So it just, I mean, interestingly for me, after the IPO didn't happen because many reasons, but one was because Amazon was announced they were coming to Australia. So I reached out to the Amazon through that process, and personally, directly, I reached out to the Amazon M&A team and I said, are you, here we are, we're turning over 100 million. Are you interested? And they said, we only buy businesses that are, we don't care what revenue you're doing. We don't care how much profit you make. They just have to be aligned to our 3 to 5 year goals. And I said, well, we're Australia's biggest online book retailer. You guys sell books. We're turning over 100 million and we're on track to go to 200 million. And you're saying that we're not aligned to your 3 to 5 year goals. I said to myself, not to them, thank you for that inside information. I'll take that away and press on.
Yes.
Because that was really helpful because we were seeing that Amazon was moving away from books and have been doing that globally. And even though they're still the biggest book retailer, the publishers and the evidence was there that they actually were moving more into a tech company rather than a supply chain and logistics fulfillment business.
That was a very inspirational conversation to have had. So that's led you to decide then and there to do IPO again? Or what was your thinking that time? Were you always going to keep it in the family? What led you to decide to IPO again? Was that a turning point moment, or what was the turning point for you?
Look, for us, was always about how do we get money off the table. So we built a business and My brother is always, he's 2 years younger than me. I'm the CEO and have been. Uh, he was, once we got past 50 million, it was big enough. He was happy to leave it at 50 million
Yeah.
revenue, pay a dividend, lovely business. Thank you very much. But that's not what he may say that's not what I wanted, but it's actually not what our customers were wanting from
Yeah.
us, to be fair. And
And when you say that, can you just slow down? So I assume you mean by that you had to provide a bigger range and faster. Is that what you mean by what our customers wanted?
no, it's just that more people were transitioning online and therefore
Yeah.
more people were coming to us. What do you
Yeah.
do? Say, we don't want you to buy from us. We need to stay at 50 million.
Yes.
No, they continued to want to transact with us. And that's what was fundamentally, we kept doing what we were doing. More people were moving online. We were
Yeah.
it, and we did it well. So Simon, my brother, he was ready to retire, which he did just before the IPO. But part of that whole journey, that goal was to, how do we get money off the table? How do we convert the value of the business, so the family can can be set for for how many generations? Who knows? We knew that we had done the hard work. There were many ways would have been happy to sell it to someone if the
Exactly.
price was right. But that wasn't the way it worked out. So when we did the capital raise at the beginning of 2020, which is quite funny because Su-Ming Wang, who is the founder and chairman of Champ Ventures, and it wasn't through Champ, it wasn't through private equity, it was through his own personal investment and a consortium of people who came in with him to make the $8 million investment. 6 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And I remember meeting up with him and looking at his very grave and gray face going, what have I just done? I've just put all this money into a company and we're being hit with a global restructure. And it turned out to be one of the best investments that he
It had to have been the best investment he made. That if you're online and but you must have known it at the time. I'm going to throw that credit to you. If everyone has to go home, they have to have things to do.
You say
online.
that now. That's not in the moment. In those days, when I reflect on it, there was no guarantees.
Okay.
Who knew, would the postal service stay open?
True.
Would we be able to deliver? How devastating was it? How was it transmittable by a book?
Yes.
All these things that there was still a lot of dust had to settle.
Got it.
So, but things very quickly, we worked out that we were on the right track and sales kicked in. So what happened was we were never planning to IPO in that year. We were going to wait a whole year because the investment that they had made in us was for us to increase our capacity by adding more automation. We wanted to go from our capacity of 30,000 books in and out per day to 60,000 out per day. And our that was a project that we'd been working on for some time, and why we did the raise. And that wasn't going to go live till the end of the year. So the pandemic hit and we didn't have that in place. So we wanted to get that deployed, get it optimized, and then be able to say to the market, look how much profitability we have now. Look at the scale, look at everything else, and have the runs on the board. But everything was very uncertain, and e-commerce had moved from the wings to center stage. The theater had been darkened and the spotlight was on e-commerce. And we decided in August, let's do it. And basically we did an 11-week IPO.
Really?
Yeah, it was bloody quick. And that helped, actually. It helped. So
why is that?
Well, because we could nothing was as long as a piece of string. Everything goes, no, don't worry about that. We'll just just do this. And we stripped a lot of away. Decisions were made quicker. And we were fortunate to a degree because we tried to IPO 4 years before, and we still had that Pathfinder, which is the pre-prospectus document. We have we had appointed our chairman 4 years before, and he and I liked each other. And he stayed on for those 4 years as our unlisted chair of Booktopia. So he'd been to our monthly board meetings. He had heard us discuss everything. Su-Ming Wang had joined us as a board member already at the beginning of the year and had met with me already well before that as we discussed the plans for the business. And he was on as a director. So there was already quite a bit of knowledge about our business. Quite often when you try to IPO, which is what happened last time, you're appointing your non-executive directors, and
Blind.
they're going into the due diligence process and the DDC meetings, which is due diligence committee meetings, with the lawyers and with the accountants and so forth, doing all of the due diligence, to then get their head around what your business is.
And even to have a cultural match or a philosophical match about how
Yeah.
to do it. Exactly. So your feeling is, and your perception is, it was successful this time around, partly because you had the right people around you who were already up to speed with how you were doing it.
No,
No.
because it was like going down to Bondi Beach on a midsummer's day with 42 degrees to sell ice creams, right? And we were oversubscribed 4 or 5 times. The valuation.
Oh, congratulations!
The valuation of the business was 315 million, and when we started, probably 4 or 5 months before, it was probably more like 200 million. So
Yeah.
e-commerce
Wow.
was really hot, and we
Yeah.
had the product. And to be fair, even though our business is valued today at around 360 million, we're very similar in size to Temple and Webster, who have got a market cap of 1 billion. We're much bigger than Adore Beauty, and their market cap is in the mid 400s. So we knew we had a very, very good business, and so what we've been able to do is get some money off the table like we had planned. There's still, the family still owns at this stage, I think, over 40%, 45% of the companies, which is terrific. And we were able to sell down, and and um, and brought some great institutional funds onto the register, and we were very passionate about a business who are in for the long term, and also the retail customers as well, who are now. So we did accomplish it. It was very helpful to have the pandemic accelerate e-commerce.
Exactly. What was the biggest challenge you faced in your first 10 years when you'd made a conscious decision not to make profit? It was 12 years. What was the mental challenge, not the physical challenge of making sure you had enough month and money, but what was the biggest challenge you faced for you?
I never feel like I have
Good on
those.
you.
Like, the question I get asked often is, what keeps you up at night? Nothing.
No.
I hit the bed, I go to sleep. So
Yeah.
um, I don't feel like that you make it sound like it was a burden, or that it was heavy, or that it was like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we did it. It's never been like that. I don't think that way. I think, okay, this is what you've thrown at me out of left field, never expected it. Okay, how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah.
Because we will. And that's one of the attributes that I have, I think.
I think so.
Which is quite helpful.
I think. Maybe.
One of the things this is the way that I explain it when I do my keynotes to entrepreneurs, and hopefully anyone can get this, through this, just through talking about it, is that, I've got a good friend of mine. She's incredible talent, but she rides the highs. Like she has a great month, or they win an award, and like she's just up there, right? And then something doesn't work out, and it's just like blah, she's just bitching and complaining and sucks, and right. And then she's up again, and she's, I get exhausted just watching her go along this, journey of like a roller coaster. Like we list on the ASX, or we win the Telstra Business Award of the year, or whatever. It's like that's how I celebrate. Very little, just a fist pump, and we're on track. And then when something doesn't work out, so the distance that I travel, right, in comparison,
You've modulated.
Is very flat. It's
very modulated.
Very rolling hills. And so I'm not up on the peaks and the valleys. And I think for me that being solid and not being, and actually she and I caught up only the last couple of weeks, because I told her exactly what I tell people, in I gave her that feedback, and she goes, I listened to that, and I've stopped myself sometimes and going, I don't need to get that pissed off or agitated or aggravated, and she heard me, she listened, and so that was but that's the way that I do it. And I think anyone that is in business, particularly as a business owner, you get stuff thrown at you out of left field that you do not expect. the government will contact you,
Yeah.
the
Regulations will
ACCC,
change.
right?
The
There'll be
ASX will have a view.
yeah, like in our warehouse, the first time we moved in here, we moved in midwinter. It was cold, of course, it's a warehouse, but then it hit summer and it was 42 degrees in the warehouse. And then everyone struggled and it got to winter and everyone was fine. And then it was coming around to summer and they were going to complain to Fair Work. And it was, okay, what do we have to do? Well, we're going to have to strengthen the struts into the ceiling and we've got to put these big jet engines, two of them that are going to cost $600,000, and that'll keep it at 28 degrees and get all the hot air out. Okay, that's what we've got to do. You didn't expect it was an extra cost, but that's what you do, and you just keep pushing through that. That's what it is to be in business. You've got to say, bring it on.
You've also got to be pragmatic. So the biggest challenge I faced, so you didn't really face one. My biggest challenge when I built my business in the first 10 years was my inability to trust others as much as I trusted myself. I could do everything better all the time. And that was my biggest thing to get over. It's just that I know best, so therefore I should do best or interfere, and just learning when to let go when it's not abdication, but delegation, which taught me systems. That was my biggest challenge. And it's the only way we're nothing like you. We do 8 figures. But to get to my first 8 figures, I had to overcome my own BS about what others could do around me and how to build a team and what culture means.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I do talk about that in my keynotes about Shlomo. So he also had an online bookstore, and Booktopia and his company started at a similar time, and we were turning over about, I don't know, $5-7 million. And I keep in touch, and I called him. I said, mate, how you going? And he goes, oh, Tony, I'm terrible. I said, what's the matter? And he goes, well, I've had 18 angina attacks in the last 3 months.
Wow.
I said, you're kidding, mate. Why? And he goes, well, my wife and I were working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I said, how many people have you got working there? Because he was turning over 2 million. And we had, I don't know, maybe 12, 14 people. And he goes, oh, there's my wife and I and 2 casuals. I said, you're joking. He goes, why don't you hire more people? He goes, well, they just never do it as good as us. I said, exactly.
Yes.
But at least they're doing part of it and they're
Yep.
taking it away. So even if it's at 80 or 90% or 70%,
Yeah.
that's more. And because I'd come from a recruitment background and I 14 years in recruitment, I understood hiring people. I understood what it took to bring people on board and let people go and so forth. So it's been very much part of me as bringing people on and empowering them to give them the opportunity to grow with the business. So that was not one of the things that I had to endure or challenge like you had to do. But I will share one thing with you, which I think has been really valuable to me. When I was a recruitment consultant, I had IT contractors working for me, and I had 15 of them. And I went and did this course with Robert Kiyosaki, the guy that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, about 7 years before he wrote that book, in the course called Money and You.
I did that.
Oh, you did it? Okay,
I
great.
did.
You know what I'm talking about. So 1992. And what happened was, it was actually, I went there because it said money. But in the end, it was more about you.
Yeah.
You probably had the same experience. And
Yeah.
so I came back from that course having had some great insights about myself, because the problem I had with my recruiting was that I got to 15 and then I would drop back down to 11 contracts.
Yeah.
And then I came back up to 15 and then I dropped back down to 10 to 11. And it just, I was stuck at this invisible ceiling. And then I had some breakthrough realizations about myself that I realized how I was self-sabotaging, or my thinking was not this certain way. And I went from 15 to 30 contractors in 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I got stuck there and I'd go back down to 24, 25, back up to 30 and then down to 20. So then I went back and did another one of his courses called Creating Wealth. And I had another breakthrough and I got to 45 contractors and then I'd get back down and I was stuck at 45. And then I did business school for entrepreneurs in Hawaii in 93. And then I had more breakthroughs. And then I ended up with about 110 contractors working for me. Now, the reason why I share that story with you, in particular for entrepreneurs, because I talk about, and I make up the scenario, if you can hear me out. Imagine if you owned a Maserati. I actually was presenting to a group of jewelers. My friend is in the jewelry business, and I said that imagine you're in a Maserati and they all looked around the room. There's
When,
about 30 and they go, yeah,
yep.
that's what I did.
Yep.
I thought, well, that was quite that was not the normal reaction. But imagine you're in a Maserati, and Maserati being an Italian sports car, quite often it needs to end up in the workshop. And this particular day, there it is. You got to drop it off, and the mechanic needs to work on it. And he gives you the loaner, and the loaner is a 15-year-old two-door Fiat. And you've got this very important meeting that you need to get to, and it's in Double Bay or it's in Toorak if you're in Melbourne. All right, and you've got to get to this meeting, and you get there, and when you arrive there, it's a little restaurant cafe that you're meeting this new big client that you're going to pitch to, and you think, well, I'll just park in the back street and I'll walk around, and there's no parking spots, and late is late, and if you do not get there on time, right, it's a reflection on the opportunities, but there's only one spot available in front of the cafe restaurant. So you park this 15-year-old two-door Fiat in front of the restaurant. You get out and you look at the client, and they're looking at you, and you're looking at the car, and they're looking at the car, and you're going, but I own a Maserati. This is not my car. This is not who I am, right? You got to get out of that car as you. It's not about
The car.
right? You are not your car. You are not your wife. You are not your husband or boyfriend or girlfriend. You are not your kids. You're not your kids' academic results or their sporting results. You are not your footy team. Even though one of my best mates thinks he's the Richmond Tigers, right?
He's not.
He is not the Richmond Tigers. And with Booktopia, right? I am not Booktopia. When Booktopia is listed, it's Booktopia that was listed. When it wins the Telstra Business Awards, it's Booktopia. And I remember when I started it, and I was walking through the apartment and past the room where I was doing my work in, and I stopped all of a sudden in front of the door because I felt this boom, 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 boom. I felt the baby, like I could feel the heartbeat of the business. I remember when it crawled. I remember when it took its first steps. I remember when it went to daycare for the first day. I remember when it went to primary school and high school and went to university and went out on its own. And because I see it as a separate organism, and I'm thinking all the time, what does it need? What does it need right now? Who does it need to have in its team? What funding does it need? What nourishment does it need? What space does it need? Right? I have not overlaid my own ego and my own belief systems about myself onto my company, which is for me, I can honestly say to your listeners that one of the reasons why Booktopia has had from 2008 to 2020, 30% plus compound annual growth rate in its revenue is because of that, because I have not identified myself as the business. It's its own organism, it's its own thing. And I'm sure that that's how Jeff Bezos and others think about their business. It's unencumbered, it's enabled to flourish of its own accord. Because if it was me and I had to overlay my own ego on it, I don't know, maybe we'd be at 60 or 70 million, because that's all I could imagine of myself. It's been a very interesting aspect to the growth and the success of the business.
Have you made mistakes with hiring where someone has brought their ego or their own insecurity into it and tried to move it in a different direction or a bad direction or a self-serving direction?
Not that, because you're
pretty good at it.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just way too dominant in terms of my vision. I do empower people to get on with it, though. If they know what they need to do, and I'm not saying, and I'm not micromanaging. I think people who've worked here will attest to that. It's like, this is what we need to do. Go away and manifest it, make it happen. So they have a lot of scope there. But I don't feel like I've been. Now that we have a board, there's that aspect in terms of being listed. Of course, non-executive directors, they're going to have their inputs. But I think one of the reasons, that's the beauty of the Booktopia business versus, say, an Adore Beauty, is that Adore Beauty, Kate has stepped back, new CEO. She's very talented, actually, Tennille. But it was an IPO led. It was a private equity led IPO. They already own. Quadrant owns 60% of the business. That's not the situation here. So people are investing in Booktopia and see Booktopia because of the vision that I and the executive have, not necessarily that it's transitioned more towards an investor-led business. So Jeff Bezos owns 10% of Amazon. that means 90% is owned by
Mm,
everyone else. It's still quite a large number, 180
mm,
billion US in personal wealth, but it's yeah, it's a I think that's one of the things. So I don't experience that. I know I understand the question that you asked, but I've never felt like I've been uh, railroaded. I've certainly made mistakes. I've certainly learnt from certain things where I've been able to pivot and change and go, yeah, okay, that didn't work. So let's move
mm.
on and let's do this.
I'm sure you get a lot of questions about your mistakes. I'm generally pretty interested to know what are you most pleased about in terms of strategic thinking. People always say you only learn from your mistakes, you don't learn from your successes. That is not true. I've learned stacks from when I'd make a good strategic decision, and I'm going to keep doing that. Where did your strategy really serve for you to get to where you are now? As you look back in hindsight, you can think, I see now why that really contributed.
It's asking that one question over and over. What do our customers
What do our
want?
customers
Through
want?
through asking that and exploring that and be curious around it, holding stock, investing in automation,
Yeah.
um, it, all the things that we've done to accomplish that has led us to here. So I think that has been one of the most insightful and valuable things that we were able to hold on to as a guide along the
Mm.
journey. People ask me as they all the time, same thing actually, oddly enough. I give them the tour of the facility so they see all the automation and the robots and the automatic packing machines, conveyors, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books everywhere. It's they go crazy. And as we're walking back towards the office, they say, "Oh, you must be so proud.
Mm.
How proud you must be." And I say to them, "This is pride to me. Imagine yourself in a pitch black room where you can't even see the hand in front of your face, that when you take a step forward that you're on track or off track simply by the way that your foot strikes the ground. Nah, that doesn't feel right. That's
Yeah.
where I've got to be." That is pride to me. So it's very,
Mm.
very internal.
It's very internal.
It's a very internal sense of knowing. They say that in Money and You, I remember that flip chart, that a plane is on track only 3% of the time and
Yeah.
97% um, um, correcting and recorrecting back to be
Yeah.
on track. So it's a bit like that. So um, yeah, I'm the successes to me in terms of some of the things that have come through is like it's that knowing that you're on track, knowing that that you're not there yet. Like one of the thing with the IPO, people are asking me, "Oh, you must feel fantastic. It must be great to list." And I could tell by the way they were asking. It's like kind of feels like you finally
You
made it,
made it.
right? And I said at the ASX in our speech to the people
Yeah.
that were there, I said, Here it is. This is the way it feels to me. It's like being on the Tour de France. You're on the 10th stage, and the IPO is the 40-kilometer go banner, where you've got still 40 Ks to get to the top of the mountain to finish the stage. And after that, you got another 11 more stages before you get to the Champs-Elysees, where
Yeah.
you get to drink champagne with your mates, go 20 kilometers an hour, and make it to the finish line. I said, this is just a sign to say you're on track, and you want that in your rear vision mirror really quick because you're still
Mm.
focused on whatever you got to do next. And that's how the IPO and many of the other things that we've accomplished as
Mm.
well, Telstra Business Awards, so forth, and
Yeah.
all those things.
I'm sensing from you, and I'm sure it's coming through to our viewers, you've become more of you through this process and not less of you. I see a lot of business owners have success, I would call this successful, or a business that's in the public eye, and they seem to magnify aspects of themselves that perhaps they wouldn't be pleased with as they look back. I have a sense that you're pleased with as you look back of you becoming more of you and the aspects of you that you like about yourself.
It's I would I would put more of that down to marriage.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Um, my wife and I have been together for almost 10 years. My son is 18, so I never got married, but I'm a father, and my ex works in the business. My wife was married before. I've got a 15-year-old stepdaughter, and and I I would say that really, you got a lot of hope and you got a lot of um, imagination about why you want to marry that person and be in that relationship. But I can assure you, it is at times you do not feel like you're going to be married the next day, and that divorce lawyers are going to be called in. But you talk it through and you love each other and you keep discovering how how you're connected, and what's not working for you, and what's going on for you. And it's business is like that. Um it's it's a it's a an emotional marriage of accomplishing something together, and that it's easy to bail out and go, I'm pulling the ripcord, and I'll see you back down on the ground. I'm out of this one. It's going to crash and burn. Or you're in it for the long term. So I have um, there's no guarantees that Catherine and I are going to be together. We just are in it every day, and why that's how business is as well. It's like you've got you're dealing with issues, and you're being asked to step up and learn and challenge yourself, and um that's that you're either invested in your own personal
Yeah, that's what I'm
evolution.
sensing in you. You either are invested in becoming the best of you and you bring that, and business requires that. So does marriage. You've got
Mm,
to want to bring your best to it for the best of it to flourish, or it's not going to be the best. It's going to
yeah,
be some facsimile that just can't sustain.
that's right. And add on top of that parenting, which even takes you at a whole nother level. But I think for me, yeah, that even one of my best mates, Pratik, from when I went to high school, he goes, Tony, I know you from I know you from high school, Chatswood High School, just a typical
Yeah.
Aussie, public school.
Yeah.
And he goes, how the hell did you end up here? Like, what? I know that kid, right? It's impossible to think that you're the guy, but it's just that personal mission, a voyage of discovery, to find out more and ask those questions and to go deeper and understand yourself and unpack. I like to do personal development workshops. I did many of them, not
Mm.
just with Robert. I did tons of different ones. To me now, being in business is like a personal development workshop. Being in a marriage and being a parent is like a personal development workshop.
And to act like it's not is to let down the other team. You'll let down your business, you'll let down your wife or your husband, you'll let down your kids if
Mm,
you don't see this moment as an opportunity for ourselves to grow. Because then we put it on them and it's up to them to change, or it's up to them to do better, or it's up to them to stop it, rather than saying, what can I own in this? That's what I got from my personal development. How much of this can I look within, rather than I can easily point. Don't get me wrong. But how much can I look within myself? If there was an entrepreneur starting out today, what would you be talking with them or mentoring them about, other than the basics and getting the fundamentals in play?
Most of the time when I meet entrepreneurs, what's missing is that the point of cash. Where is someone going to hand over the money
Yeah.
to something? And I'll share with you a story. When I was at business school with Robert Kiyosaki in 1993, I the course of 16 days was incredible. You started at 7 a.m. in your running team, you finished at 2 a.m. in your marketing teams. He flew people in across many different subjects all through the 16 days. I learned so much, and it was 3 years before I started my own company. But on one of the days, as a process, as a challenge, at the break, he sent us out and said, what I want you to do is I want you to go out there, and we're in Hawaii, on the big island of Hawaii, and I want you to go out there and sell. And if you got a dollar bill in your pocket, just take it out. There was 150 in the course. Just go around and sell. And if you, for the point of integrity of the process, if you could be the one being sold to, if you feel like you want that, then you got to hand over your dollar. And I went out, and I was in recruitment. So I went out hard and strong. Like, we've got the best business. We've got the biggest database. We advertise more in marketing than anyone else and in the newspapers, and we attract more candidates, and so on and so forth. And I was just saying all these, it was really intense. And I came back in after that. I had not made $1. It was just, that's already hopeless. I'm the best salesman in my company. That really sucks. And so I walk back into the room, and the course goes on. The next break, he does the same thing. I change my tactic. and I'm more loving. We listen to our candidates. We understand what they need. We talk to our clients, really looking for what they want, and we do. It's like a matchmaking service.
Mm.
And people were much kinder in the feedback this time around. Tony, oh, I really love what you're saying, but no, I don't think so. I walk back into the room and go, that process really sucks. I hate that process. I'm the best salesman in my company. And so the course goes on. Then we take the next break. And I do something completely different. I sit in the corner with my arms folded and my legs crossed, and I said, well, you can go and get stuffed, right? That didn't work either.
Can't believe it.
Yeah. So then the course goes on. And while I was sitting there, I'm going to myself, you know what? This is not right. What am I not thinking? What am I doing here? Something's got to change. And while I'm sitting there, I realized, oh my God, 2 years ago, I remember I did that remedial massage course. I can go out and offer a massage. So the next break, I offered 3-minute massages for $1. I made $14.
Yeah.
And seriously, when you ask that question in terms of entrepreneurs, it's about really understanding where the cash is. So when we had before our internet marketing business, we had a chat software company, and the .com crash hit, and no one was interested in putting chat software on their website. We couldn't pay ourselves a salary. My son had just been born. My brother and brother-in-law's families, they couldn't earn any money. My parents were giving us a bit of money to make it through. And I was speaking to a web designer, asking them, how do you get to the top of Google? Like if we were at the top of Google for the software that we had, which was chat software for the internet, how do you get to the top of Google if someone does a search because they've been going for a few years and getting more and more popular? And he told me what to do. And I was talking to this lady about getting her to use chat software, and she said to me, look, I'd love to chat to people. I just need more people coming to my site. And I said, well, I can get you to the top of Google. She said, well, give me a proposal. So I did for $500 and did the job, and she was very happy. We were in such dire straits. I was talking to the largest car rental company in New Zealand about using our chat software, and the similar conversation occurred. I'd love to chat to people, need more people. I can get you to the top of Google. Give me a proposal. This time I put one in for 18,000.
Yeah.
I spoke to him for an hour on the phone, all the things we're going to do, change his website, drive traffic, improve his business. And at the end of the hour, he said, all right, let's do it. Put down the phone, turned to my family. I said, shit, we're in big trouble now. We have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
But it was that experience in Hawaii with the $1 that made the difference, because I knew that that's where the money was. And letting go of what we actually originally had and pivoting very quickly to go for the money is one of the most important. They talk about test and correct, and like in the beginning, just because you think you have an idea and this is it.
And it's your passion.
And you spend a lot of time and you came up with a name and you bought the URL and maybe the website, you spent a lot of time over it, right? You've got to focus on the cash, because that's what will pay you. That's how we built Booktopia. We weren't perfect. You can go to archive.org, look at the Wayback Machine, put in booktopia.com.au, and you will see what Booktopia looked like in 2004. It takes an HTML photograph of websites around the world, and you will see what we look like. You will see what we looked like over the years, and you go, my God, that's a bit embarrassing, turning over $8 million. Right? That's really, really important. You've got to get up and running, and the money has got to come.
You've been asked, just to finish, you said you've asked this question a lot, what keeps you awake at night? I think your obsession is what keeps your customers awake at night. And because you answer that question really well, you keep expanding.
Yeah. What do our customers? I've never thought about it.
That's what you've been talking about. You think about what your customers want. That's your obsession. It's not about what you want, which is what people ask you about. Your obsession's where it needs to be. What's right for the customer, not what's right for me.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, you get rewarded to get the things that you want.
Yeah.
Perpendicular to what your intention was. And that is to get your customers what they want. Absolutely. And that is your quest.
My first personal development was Jim Rohn, and I'm going to mangle his quote, but he said, help enough people's dreams come true and yours get taken care of.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Tony. I really appreciate you.
It's been wonderful. This has got to be a part one. Surely
Clearly.
there's got to be a part two.
I've barely scratched the surface. I'm respecting your time, but I'm holding back on the 5 other thoughts I've got going. But thank you so much, Tony. You're really, really kind.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.